Hey guys, before I get started, I'm just doing a little flip of the pages that I've done already this month. And today we are on day 10 of our journaling every day in the month of November. So I'm starting out the same as I did on a few of my other pages using the Tim Holtz mixed media dies, and I die cut the two corners out of a piece of white cardstock, like 60-pound cheap cardstock, and I'm going to adhere it down to my page with Collage Page matte, and I'm making like a little sandwich of the Collage Page, the cardstock, and then Collage Page on top. And I just want to make sure that everything's adhered really well, so none of my mediums get underneath the die cuts. So I'm also covering my page with a layer of gesso. I might not necessarily have to do this, but I just like to start out with a clean white surface. I'm starting out with HandMade Modern acrylic paint in Slate, and this is a Target brand of craft paint. And I have a Tim Holtz stencil called Dot Fade, and I'm applying my paint with a makeup sponge. That is my preferred method, or my preferred application of paint through stencils, because it's easy to control how much paint you get on it, so you don't end up getting too much where you don't want it and getting some of that seepage underneath. So I concentrated my stencil mostly in the middle of the page and not where the die cutting is around the edges. I'm now taking some distress paint, and all the colors will be listed in the description box below, and I'll also show them on screen after I'm done. I wasn't sure which colors I was going to use, so I'm going to show you afterwards which ones I used. So I'm just using teeny tiny bits and putting a little bit down on the page, and then I have a little water on my craft meat mat, and then I dip my finger in the water and then use my finger with the water on it to spread out the distress paint, because distress paint is water reactive, and it does do really cool blendy things when you add water to it. I'm trying to make it look really faded and light, and this page did kind of take a pastel turn, which I really wasn't going for, but sometimes I have an idea in my head and it doesn't quite work out on the page. For this, my idea was just that I wanted to use more of the Tim Holtz mixed media dyes with the texture on my pages, because I'm really enjoying using those dyes and seeing how I can use different products to highlight the texture and things like that. So that was my only plan for this page. Now I have a little bit of darker colors of distress paint, and I'm just concentrating that on the edges. I'm trying to put the darker colors on the edges and then kind of fade it out towards the center. So here I have Dusty Concord, Spun Sugar, and Stormy Sky. And I also used Mermaid Lagoon, Evergreen Bough, Cracked Pistachio, and Blueprint Sketch. Now I have my distress crayons, and I'm using set 1 and set 2, and I'm trying to choose colors that kind of coordinate with the colors of distress paint that I already have down, except they're darker, because the distress crayons are really pigmented to begin with, and the way I applied the distress paint, it's lighter. You can make it darker, but that's not what I was going for. You can make the distress paint darker, I should say. I'm having a really hard time explaining what I'm doing. I feel like I'm stumbling. I hope this is making sense. So yeah, I'm just putting a little bit of the distress crayon on my page and then using my finger to move it around and blend it out. And doing the same thing, kind of trying to darken up the edges. And I used, Chipped Sapphire, Mermaid Lagoon, Peacock Feathers, and Seedless Preserves of the Distress Crayons, but they're from set 1 and set 2. I wasn't really happy with the blend of the color on the edges to the white on the inside, and I wanted it to look more seamless. So I got out some gesso, and the reason I chose gesso instead of white paint is because gesso is easier it's easier if you want to apply a sheer thin layer than white paint. White paint can sometimes be a little more opaque, and I wanted to use the gesso just to blend that color into the center more, so it wasn't like that harsh line separating the two. So I'm using the gesso and some water to just blend them together, and I'm much happier with the way that looks. Now I have a gelato, and if you don't have the distress crayons, you can totally use gelatos where I use the distress crayon. I don't have a black distress crayon, so I'm using the gelatos interchangeably. So I'm just going on the edges, and I'm using a paintbrush with some water to kind of activate the black gelato because it was skipping over the negative space of my dye, and I wanted to, just around the edges, I wanted to fill in that white space. I didn't want the white space of the negative dye to show around the edges, so the water helps to fill that in. And then I decided to go around my entire page with the gelato. These are some die cut flowers. It's a Tim Holtz die called Wildflowers, and I just die cut them in some regular black cardstock, and I'm applying it with clear tacky glue. This is a Tim Holtz word band. It has like a sentiment on it. It's metal and it has a sentiment on it. And I'm highlighting the words in it and also toning down the metal look by using some gesso, just smearing some gesso over it and pressing the paint or the gesso into the recessed parts of the metal, and it catches. And then I'm kind of wiping it away, and so that the gesso stays mainly in the recessed parts of the words. And then I have some pink embroidery thread, and I just loop that through the corner or the sides. And then I think this is silver thread. Yeah, it's silver thread, and I'm just bunching it up and putting it behind the word band because it seemed kind of bare when there wasn't anything behind it. And I'm just putting that down with some tacky glue. It did take a while to dry, but once it dried, it's been holding it on there. So I thought at first maybe I should have used hot glue, but it worked out. So tacky glue is just fine. So here are some still shots, and the products that I used will be listed and linked in the description box below. If you have any questions, let me know, and thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.